As you can see, the paper stencil, even though it was loose pieces stuck to the screen, I will warn you that if you do loose pieces, they may come off if your printing angle is not exactly right. We'll talk about that some more in a second. I'm referring to the angle you pull the squeegee at. This is the squeegee. It's like a big rubber blade like a windshield wiper. You simply pull it across, and you can see how the paper stencil prevented the ink from printing in those places. Here's the finished print. Now, obviously I'm printing a Valentine card here. Yes, Mr. Boucher is married. And I print a custom card for my wife every year. And all I'm doing is printing a blank screen. And you can see that the screen, if there's not a stencil, prints a rectangle. And that rectangle is the rectangle on your format stencil. So, then we go on to the next stencil for the next person. All right, this is a screen with no ink on it. And you can see that if I lower it down there, you can see the self-portrait, not clearly, but you're seeing it because there are holes in the piece of cloth stretched on this wooden frame. This is a squeegee. It is just a rubber blade with a handle. The handle may be plastic or wood, sometimes metal, but it's just a rubber blade, and you drag that across the screen, it pulls the ink, just like a windshield wiper wipes the water across a windshield. And then where the holes are, the ink goes down, hits the stencil. And wherever there's a hole in the stencil, it goes through and prints on the shorter paper beneath. What I have here is what's called a master drawing. I've drawn my shapes, labeled my colors. You'll notice that I marked the top and the left. That's how we know where to load it under the screen. I used B for blue and BK for black. And you'll notice that on the background, I marked it in several places. That was just to help me visualize where it was going to be black. So, I have the white of the paper, or in your case, the white of the t-shirt if you're doing a shirt. And then the ink colors are yellow, blue, and black, printed in that order. They will print on top of each other. So, I also put my name and the period at the bottom. And you'll notice I wrote it right at the very bottom of the paper, far away from the picture. And that's to make it easier to get your work back to. This is what's called a format stencil. This makes sure that you don't do a design that's bigger than this particular screen will print. You line it up on the top left of a piece of bond paper, which I'll give you, and then you'll draw a design. Now, here's one a student did. The first one was just an example I did. This is one a student did, and what they did was they drew the shapes they wanted yellow, and the shapes they wanted blue, and the shapes they wanted black, and they labeled them. And then you check to make sure you don't have two of the same color touching, because if they actually touch, they become one shape. So if this stripe here that's marked B for black was labeled yellow, this would just disappear into that line. This edge of the circle would disappear. So you want to be careful about that. Okay, what we have here is what's called a master drawing. I've drawn my shapes, labeled my colors. You'll notice that I marked the top and the left. That's how we know where to load it under the screen. I used B for blue and BK for black. And you'll notice that on the background, I marked it in several places. That was just to help me visualize where it was going to be black. So I have the white of the paper, or in your case, the white of the t-shirt if you're doing a shirt. And then the ink colors are yellow, blue, and black, printed in that order. They will print on top of each other. So I also put my name and the period at the bottom. And you'll notice I wrote it right at the very bottom of the paper, far away from the picture. And that's to make it easier to get your work back to you if it gets separated from you somehow. Okay. So that's what a master stencil looks like, and then we'll go through each stage of the printing. All right, this is the first of 3 stencils to make a design. Where you see the black is actually a hole in the paper. I cut the hole. You see there is a loose piece. It's fairly large, and that's good. Small pieces sometimes come off if your printing angle isn't perfect. But I cut a hole where the black is. Okay, this is the first day printing. It printed yellow where the hole was. You can see the loose piece stuck and blocked the ink. This is the second stencil. Once again, there's a hole cut where I want the color to go. So I'm doing yellow, blue, and black. So there's just a hole where the blue is supposed to go. Okay, the blue printed where the holes were and left everything else untouched, so the yellow didn't get printed over. Now these colors will print on top of each other. If I, for instance, had wanted a blue dot here in the middle of the yellow, I could have simply printed yellow there without having to block it, and then printed blue on top. This is the final black stencil. It's just loose pieces of paper to cover where the yellow and the blue and where I wanted it to stay white. Yellow, blue, and where I wanted it to stay white. Okay, this is the final print with the black. You can see the loose pieces stuck, and they kept the ink from going over the blue, the white, or the yellow. And that's the final design. Okay, this is where you drew a design. You take the format stencil, which I showed you. You trace it onto a piece of bond paper, and you draw your design. You label all the colors. In this case, the colors were yellow, white, or black. And you need to make sure that 2 colors don't touch, or the line between them will disappear. You can fix that 2 ways. Change the color, or you can simply cut a line there. Instead of one tiny line, you widen it a little so that a strip of color can be there. The little yellow rectangle at the bottom is just blocking the name. Here is their final design. All right, this is a anime type drawing that someone did. Here again, 2 stencils, one for the yellow red, one for the purple black. I thought it was a very effective drawing. Here's an example of one of the drawings I did on the stencil to do a portrait of my friend Nelson Mandrell. He's a famous musician. Here's the first yellow stencil. I printed a blue, which is a metallic blue, and it's so dark it reads as black in a lot of photographs. Now, on the final example, this is the finished portrait. You'll notice that it's orange instead of yellow. That was just color shift. The colors shift on the screen a little bit and will become darker or lighter as you go along. So even though I made multiple copies, they're all slightly different.